I would like to know what's the difference between President Trump watching TV, even pleading to go to the Capitol while the Capitol was being attacked, and President Biden going to the beach and having fun while Supreme Court justices are under attack by a verbally violent mob. What's the difference between those two leaders?
Wait, what's the comparison you're making? Could you say the first part?
So I'm saying that what's the difference between President Trump not doing anything while the Capitol was being attacked and President Biden not doing anything while protesters, while the Supreme Court justices were under attack in their own homes with their families and with their children?
Well, there are two major differences here. First of all,
hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to cover this story about White House correspondent Michael Ateba. He's a correspondent for Today News Africa, and I believe he's originally from Cameroon, but he works here as a White House correspondent. And unfortunately, he hasn't had the best time with the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. He claims that she basically doesn't call on him, she ignores him, and he says this has been going on for at least 9 months and hasn't answered a single question of his. So it appears perhaps she doesn't want to deal with him. She doesn't want to deal with his questions. She doesn't want to deal with him, confronting her on the real issues, especially pertaining to Africa. He's called out some hypocrisy that he feels this administration has shown in regards to international relations. So I don't know. She just doesn't seem to care to call on him, to answer his questions, to hear him out. And, I've seen some of the exchanges they've had in the past. She's come across very condescending. And of course, he's not the only one. But still, when it comes to the exchanges they've had, she does come across condescending. And he's like, I'm an immigrant, I'm African, and I feel you're basically trampling on the little guy.
What you are doing, you are making a mockery of the First Amendment.
Decorum, please.
It's been 7 months. You've not called on me. You've not my messages. I'm saying that's not right. That's not right.
On times, welcome, guys. Welcome to the press briefing room.
That's not right. This is not China. This is not Russia. This is the United States. This is the White House.
No.
It's been 7 months. I sent you
The rest of us are here too, pal.
It's been 7 months. You guys have not done anything for me.
If you have grievances, you should bring them to her later.
I have
Right
done
now,
that.
this is
I've
for
done
the
that.
entire
All my
press corps.
emails have been
And the
ignored.
press corps is tired of dealing with this.
It isn't
I've done
about
that.
you,
I
Simon.
understand that you get questioned all the time and you don't understand what it is to sit here for 8 months and being discriminated against. I understand that you're in the front row and you feel comfortable and you get questioned all the time. But there are people in the back who don't get any questions.
Don't make assumptions about what the rest of us do. Mind your manners when you're in here. If you have a problem, you bring it up afterwards.
What has just occurred this last 10, 15 minutes is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. So we're either going to continue the briefing or we can just end the briefing right here.
The First Amendment protects the freedom of speech, the press, and assembly, and the right to petition your government to seek redress. And that First Amendment says that I have the right to ask questions, to do my job, and the press secretary doesn't need to like me, date me, marry me, have 2 black children with me. She doesn't need all that. She doesn't even need to like my accent, doesn't need to like what I look like, where I come from. They look down on me. They don't respect the First Amendment. And so what has been happening in the White House is in the past 7 months, I've done all the right things. I've not been called on. I've gone to her office to seek a meeting. She said that she will meet with me next year. I've sent questions about the Nigerian election, about, the problems, challenges in Africa. And they've not called on me, even as the vice president is going to Africa, even as the first lady, Jill Biden, went to Africa. Even when they received 50 African leaders for the U.S.-African Summit in Washington, D.C., the guy who covers the White House, the African guy who covers the White House, is looked down upon in the greatest country in the world, in the most advanced country where freedom of speech is protected. It's a shame what happened today. One of the guys that you showed there now, Brian, he was kicked out of the WACA because he became violent in the Rose Garden. It's a disgrace. It's very violent. He attacks many people. It's a shame. What happened to me today, it's a total disgrace, and it's happening in the Biden White House. And you know, when it happens to Jim Acosta of CNN, because they respect him, he's white, he works for CNN, I'm black, I'm African, I don't have money, they look down on me, I don't have the opportunities that they have, and they don't treat me the same way. I need to do my job. The freedom of speech and the press in the U.S. allows me to do my job, and that's the only thing that I'm trying to do. And they are stonewalling me, trying to help Karine Jean-Pierre, and it's a shame.
So he's claiming that they cut out the heated exchange he had with Karine Jean-Pierre in the initial post that they put up on their the White House YouTube channel. And apparently when they got caught, they released the original version and then claimed it was a technical difficulty. So let's take a look. A reporter known for his clashes with the Biden White House has accused it of purposefully deleting a heated exchange with Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre from Monday's official live stream. I'm black, I'm an immigrant, and I'm the little guy. I'm just trying to do my job. The White House correspondent for Today News Africa, Simon Ateba, told Fox News Digital. The missing portion, which was later restored after Fox News reached out for comment, featured Ateba accusing the White House of discriminating against him. Jean-Pierre said, "The White House under this administration, we're committed to freedom of press. I want to be very clear about that." And of course, he's going to have something to say about that, because there's been numerous occasions where she's refused to answer questions, or she's answered them basically not giving much away. She doesn't answer questions a lot of the time. The tough questions, she just evades. And you could tell the members of the press are getting very frustrated, especially in recent times. Even people who are supposed to be on her side, who, you know, report in a favourable manner towards Democrats. Ateba followed up asking, "So are you going to take questions from me? Because you've been discriminating against me for the past 9 months." Let's take a look at the exchange.
We're certainly here at the White House under this administration. We're committed to the freedom of the press, which is why we had the press conference last week. So just want to remind folks, that's why we had the press conference last week. And just to also just repeat what you just all heard from my colleague, we are certainly condemn any efforts of intimidation or harassment of a journalist or any journalist that is just trying to do their job. And so I just want to be very clear about that.
Discriminating against me for the past 9 months.
Stop. How is she discriminating against you?
No, she called on you. She just gave you a few questions.
If
I
you
just
ask
need a question in 9
ask
months.
a question.
Please.
Go ahead,
Allow
Amber.
me to
Pick
do
this
my
up.
job and ask my question. When you say that the journalists are being discriminated against, I've been in this
If this
briefing-
continues, we're going to end the press
I've
briefing.
been in this
If this
briefing room, I'm
continues,
trying to ask you
you're
one
being
question.
incredibly rude.
Stop.
You're incredibly rude. You're being incredibly
No, but
rude.
you're
You're talking over your colleague.
You're not applying
You're
it in
talking.
this
You're
briefing.
talking over your colleague.
I have a
I'm not talking about the colleagues.
that I'd like to ask. When President Biden forgave a student debt, the administration booked a $400 billion cost.
Okay, so you saw that. Now, I guess it was frustrating for him when she's talking about the freedom of the press, and he's like, well, are you going to answer my question then? Are you going to finally let me do my job and not hinder what I'm doing as a member of the press? He's calling out the hypocrisy there. And yes, he called out because, you know, she never calls on him. So he basically interrupted her. And that's why she's saying he's being rude, talking over, you know, his colleagues. And she finally spoke to him. So I wish he had done that, you know, to answer his question, so it wouldn't have got to this stage. He's saying that this has been going on for 9 months, and this is not the first time he has called her out on this. And, you know, I would have liked other members of the press there to kind of back him up and say, okay, ask your question so we can get on with it. That would have been nice, but of course, you know, that's not how things work. So she said, "You're incredibly rude. You're being incredibly rude." She proceeded to threaten to end the press briefing if Ateba wouldn't fall in line and stop interrupting. This occurred before any reporters had asked their questions. "If this continues, we're going to end the press briefing," she said. "I've been in this briefing room. I've been trying to ask you one question when I'm on," Ateba responded to Jean-Pierre. "You're not given freedom of the press." After Fox News Digital reached out for comment about the missing exchange, the portion of the missing video was then restored to the stream. The White House told Fox News that the portion missing was caused by an error with the encoder that feeds the live stream to YouTube. So conveniently, it just happened to be the exchange with Simon Ateba that was cut out due to the encoding error. So let's see what Simon said. Simon says, so Simon was saying the White House fraud continues. They have two versions of the briefing on YouTube. The first one, where they edited me out during my exchange with Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. The second one, where they restored it. Both versions are up. Here they are. So let's look at this first one. This is hilarious to me. Let's just go to, oh, what? They didn't even have Karine there at all for that part. That's insane. Oh, right, let me see.
Going to be for them to speak to. All I can do is tell you what President Biden's focused on, and that's making sure, A, we're staying.
She's clearly acting secretary, and we are doing everything that we can during the budget negotiation to make those calls, to have conversations with senators on the Hill through. Gotcha.
Karine, to follow up on the press freedom issue that you touched on, can you give us a sense of the discussion between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi about that? What did they discuss, and what did President Biden
I'm just going to go a bit further. So with the first link, the exchange was completely cut out. It did seem a bit glitchy there, to be honest. I mean, there was a couple of jump cuts, which is odd for a live stream. But the whole exchange, even the question by the reporter who came after Simon after his exchange with Karine, that question doesn't appear to be on that stream either. So yeah, it did cut out quite a big chunk, the press conference there. So, they're saying it was a technical glitch. Interesting how it was restored after Fox News reached out to them, according to this article. So I don't know, that does sound very dodgy to me. So Simon also tweeted, outraged after the White House removed my interaction with White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre during our press briefing yesterday, Monday. What they did was they pretended that the feed had a problem on YouTube when we were live, then continued broadcasting after our exchange, without the portion of the exchange. In doing so, they violated the Public Records Act. They only restored that portion after they were caught and called out, long after the briefing. It was a total fraud. Fox News just made that their #1 story tonight. Really a pity. Total fraud. I love how he calls them out, I'm not going to lie. I love how he calls them out. So, yeah, I mean, if this is true, if it was a deliberate cutting out of, that exchange that he had with the press secretary, he's alleging or he's arguing that they are in violation of the Public Records Act, because this is live streamed for the public to see without any editing, without any manipulation, for full transparency. And yeah, I don't know why they would cut that out, because he's had these exchanges with her in the past. We know this is nothing new. So I don't know why they would cut this particular exchange out. Now, she was talking about freedom of the press, and he calls her out while she's talking about that, calls her out on the hypocrisy. So maybe that could be a reason, but who knows? So Ateba said he was skeptical that it was a technical error and accused the White House of removing it on purpose. He told Fox News that he has been consistently marginalized, saying he has been iced out of the White House events. His emails go unanswered, and he has been ignored in press briefings for months. There was one time he tweeted that he bumped into Karine at a restaurant and she just totally blanked him. He basically, he's an outsider. He's very much, claims to be an outsider, and they've made that clear to him. So he said, if the White House deems a reporter problematic, they blacklist you. They don't respond to your question, they don't respond to your email, and they don't allow you to ask questions in the background, he said. Wow. You know what? The way this administration handles things, this does not surprise me. This is how they respond to people who challenge them. This is how they respond to people who ask tough questions. You see what she does in press briefings. The other day she accused a reporter of, insinuating that trans kids are dangerous and that he himself is dangerous for simply asking a question about biological males competing in sports. And she can be very condescending. And that's one of my main things that I cannot stand about her. And the gaslighting. The gaslighting is one of the worst traits that this administration has displayed. Right up from the very top, from Biden himself, to the press secretary, they all gaslight. Ateba maintains it is his job not to be friends with the White House, but to make those who are comfortable uncomfortable. And that's what they don't like about him. But what happens is if you do that, if you make the comfortable uncomfortable, what happens to you is they try to sideline you. And the other people will be afraid to even come near you because they don't want to be seen close to you. Because then they won't get questions at the next press briefing. And then they won't be invited to social events, he said. Ateba then said it was offensive for the Biden administration to claim it was deepening ties to Africa by sending officials there while sidelining an African reporter in the Washington briefing room. Exactly. It's the hypocrisy I can't stand. This is how they're treating, an African reporter while claiming they want to create ties with Africa. Look at the way they talk about Uganda and, the nations that don't bow to their woke agenda. Look at the way they speak about those nations. So, I'm not buying it for 1 minute. I've done my best, he said. And when you think about it, in the next 50 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, when people look back and see that African journalist who was there in the briefing room trying to do the job, is just trying to ask the question and trying to strengthen ties between the US and Africa. And you pass on him. You ban him, you sideline him, you oppress him, you discriminated against him only to go to Africa and claim that you want to strengthen ties. Actually offensive, it's shocking. They go on about diversity this, diversity that, inclusion. The first administration to have the black Supreme Court judge and things of that nature. But look how they're treating this African reporter, the little guy, as he puts it. They only care about people who coddle them, people who, hype them up and basically act as if they're the best thing since sliced bread. That's the only people they care about. People who literally lie, like people on The View, talking about this administration is doing such a great job. Really? But those who challenge them, those who ask the tough questions, they ice them out. Hypocrisy at its finest. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves and God willing, I will see you in the next video.